In the style of Rick Warren, without mentioning his name opening speech introduction, there comes a point in life when the smile fades, when even the strongest heart whispers, "I can't do this anymore." Have you ever felt like that? Like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Bills are piling up, relationships are falling apart, dreams are delayed, and you're waking up every morning wondering how much longer you can keep pretending that you're okay. You scroll through your phone hoping for some good news, but instead all you find are reminders of everything you're not, what you're missing, who's left, and how far behind you feel. Maybe you cry in silence, maybe no one sees it, but God does. He sees the tears no one else sees. He hears the prayers you don't even know how to pray anymore. Let me tell you something that might just save your soul today. You were never meant to carry this alone. Life gets heavy, yes, but God never asked you to handle it by yourself. The weight you're feeling, the pressure, the fear, the confusion, that's your cue to surrender. That's your invitation to let God step in. He's not waiting for you to have it all together. He's waiting for you to give it all to Him. This message, when life is too heavy, let God handle it, isn't just a reminder, it's a rescue. It's for the broken, the burnt out, the barely hanging on. It's for you, and today we're going to discover the freedom that comes, not by trying harder, but by trusting deeper. So lean in, open your heart, because what you're about to hear might just be the break through you've been praying for. There are burdens we were never built to carry, pressures, expectations, fears, and regrets that slowly begin to suffocate the soul. We walk through life trying to be strong for everyone, trying to hold it all together. We convince ourselves that if we just push a little harder, if we just smile a little brighter, maybe we can survive what's silently breaking us. But deep down, we know something's not right. Our shoulders ache, not just from stress, but from trying to carry a weight that was never meant to be ours. You were not created to live under constant anxiety. You weren't designed to live in fear, in burnout, in quiet desperation. That heavy feeling in your chest, the one that never quite goes away, that's not just emotional exhaustion. That's your soul trying to tell you something. It's God whispering, this load is not yours alone. We have a tendency to believe that being responsible means being in control. We think that if we don't handle it, no one will. So we take on the role of fixer, protector, provider, even when it starts to crush us, and the more we carry, the less we can breathe. We isolate ourselves in silent suffering, afraid to admit that we're not okay, afraid that letting go is the same as giving up. But the truth is, some things are too big for us, some battles are too heavy. And that's not a flaw in your faith, it's a sign of your humanity. God never intended for you to carry what only He can handle. He knows our limits. He knows how fragile we really are behind the masks we wear. He sees the sleepless nights, the private breakdowns, the brave faces we put on while our hearts are falling apart. And He says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That's not a poetic sentiment. That's a divine promise. When we try to carry everything ourselves, we begin to live from a place of survival instead of purpose. We miss out on the peace God offers because we're too busy pretending to be strong. But God isn't impressed by our pretending. He's not looking for perfect people. He's looking for surrendered hearts, hearts that are humble enough to say, "God, I can't do this without you. I wasn't made to." That's not weakness, that's wisdom. We've been conditioned to believe that trusting God is our last resort, something we try only after everything else fails. But it was always meant to be our first response. Letting God handle what's too heavy for us is not laziness or irresponsibility, it's obedience. It's acknowledging that He is God and we are not. It's putting the burden back in the hands of the one who holds the universe together. Think about it. If God can hold the stars in place, if He can command the oceans and shape the mountains, don't you think He can hold your life too? Don't you think He can handle your pain, your confusion, your impossible situation? We forget that the hands that were nailed to a cross are the same hands that reach out to lift us when we're falling. And those hands are still strong enough to carry what you can't. Every time you try to manage what only God can fix, you delay your own healing. Every time you convince yourself that you're supposed to be strong enough, you rob yourself of the grace that God so freely offers. He isn't asking you to be invincible. He's asking you to be real, to be honest, to admit that this is too much, that you're tired, that you don't know what to do next. And when you do, something powerful happens, not around you, but inside you. Your surrender is more powerful than your strength. That truth is hard for us to accept in a world that constantly tells us to toughen up, push harder, never let them see you sweat. We're taught from an early age that strength is found in self-reliance, that if we just dig deep enough, we can overcome anything. But what happens when you've dug so deep there's nothing left? What do you do when the well runs dry, when your strength fails, and when your willpower crumbles under the pressure of what life has thrown at you? That's when surrender stops being a weakness and starts becoming a weapon. You see, we've misunderstood surrender. We've been taught that surrender means quitting, admitting defeat, waving the white flag because we've lost. But in the kingdom of God, surrender is not the end, it's the beginning. It's the point where your strength finally steps aside and God's power steps in. When you stop trying to do it all, fix it all, be it all, He begins to do what only He can. There's a different kind of strength that's born when you say, God, I can't, but you can. That moment of surrender isn't about giving up hope. It's about placing your hope in the only one who never runs out of strength. Your greatest power is not in your ability to fight harder. It's in your willingness to trust deeper. When you try to hold everything together on your own, you put yourself under a weight that crushes your spirit. But when you surrender it to God, you're no longer standing in your own strength. You're standing in His. And His strength is unlimited. His shoulders don't grow tired. His hands don't slip. His heart doesn't grow weary of carrying what you can't. There's a peace that comes in surrender that you'll never find in striving. There's a quiet confidence that rises when you stop forcing outcomes and start trusting God's timing. It's not passive. It's not defeat. It's the boldest declaration of faith you can make. God, I choose to trust you more than I trust my plan. The world may not understand it. They may look at you and wonder why you're not panicking, why you're not trying to control every detail, why you seem calm in the middle of chaos, and the answer is simple: because you've surrendered. You've handed over the weight of your future, your relationships, your fears, and your failures to the one who knows the beginning from the end. When you surrender, it doesn't mean everything will suddenly be easy. But it does mean you'll stop carrying what was never yours. You'll find clarity in the confusion, rest in the storm, and grace in the grind, because now you're not walking alone, you're walking with God. And that changes everything. Surrender is the doorway to healing. It's the bridge between despair and hope. When you finally let go, you make room for God to show up and show off in ways you never imagined. Surrender is where transformation begins, not when you're at your strongest, but when you're finally honest enough to say, I'm not strong enough on my own. Faith begins where your ability ends. That's a hard truth to embrace, especially when you've spent your whole life trying to prove you're capable. We like to believe we can handle it if we plan well enough, work hard enough, pray long enough. Somehow we'll make it. But the moment we reach the edge of our strength, the moment we face something we can't control, that's where real faith is born. You see, as long as you're relying on your own ability, you're not really stepping into faith. You're operating in comfort. It's only when life stretches you beyond your skills, beyond your logic, beyond your experience, that God invites you into something deeper. That's the uncomfortable space where faith breathes, grows, and strengthens. God is not impressed by our talent, our resumes, or our strategies. He's moved by trust, and trust doesn't show up when everything makes sense. It shows up when nothing does, when the path isn't clear, the answers aren't coming, and you're standing at the edge of uncertainty with nothing to hold onto but his promises. It's easy to have faith when the bank account is full, the kids are healthy, the plans are working. But what about when everything falls apart, when the doors stay closed, when the healing doesn't come the way you expected? That's when you find out what your faith is really made of. That's when God becomes more than a concept. He becomes your lifeline. We often think faith is about getting what we want, but true faith is trusting God even when we don't. It's believing He's good when life feels bad. It's holding onto Him when everything else is falling apart. And it's in those very moments, when your ability is exhausted, when your strength is gone, that God says, "Now let me step in." That's the beauty of faith. It begins where you end. Where your resources run dry, His overflow begins. Where your answers stop, His wisdom takes over. Where your strength fails, His grace sustains. He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for a heart that says, "Even if I can't, I believe you still can." You were never meant to have it all figured out. That pressure to perform, to be strong, to always know what to do, it was never God's burden for you. Faith doesn't grow in the spotlight of success. It grows in the shadows of surrender. It grows when you say, "God, I don't see the way forward, but I trust that you do. I'm not in control, but you are." Sometimes God allows us to come to the end of ourselves, not to punish us, but to prepare us, to stretch our faith, to remind us that His strength is made perfect in our weakness, to shift our eyes from what we can do to what only He can do, because that's where the miracle lies, not in our striving, but in our trusting. Not in our plans, but in His purpose. Faith begins where our ability ends, because it was never about what we could accomplish on our own. It was always about what He could do through us when we finally let go and trust Him completely. God does His best work in your weakest moments. It doesn't always feel that way, though. When you're at your lowest, when the tears won't stop, when the silence is deafening, when you don't even have the strength to pray, it can feel like God is far away. But the truth is, that's often when He's the closest. He's not repelled by your weakness. He's drawn to it. He's not waiting for you to get it together. He's waiting for you to realize you don't have to. We live in a culture that idolizes strength. Push through, keep going, never let them see you break. But in God's kingdom, the rules are different. It's not the strong who are most powerful. It's the surrendered. It's not the ones who have it all together, but the ones who fall apart at His feet and say, "Lord, I need you." That's the moment heaven leans in. God never wastes your weakness. He doesn't overlook your pain. He works right in the middle of it. While you're trembling, He's steady. While you're overwhelmed, He's in control. And while you're falling apart, He's putting things together, inside you, around you, and ahead of you. His power isn't threatened by your tears. In fact, Scripture says His strength is made perfect in weakness. That means He's at His best when you're at your worst. Think about that. The moments when you feel the most broken, the most helpless, the most unworthy, that's when God's grace shows up in full force. That's when He reminds you that it was never about your performance, your perfection, or your power. It's always been about His presence. He does what you can't. He carries what you can't. He heals what you can't even explain. And sometimes it's in your weakest moment that you discover something you couldn't see before, that His love isn't dependent on how strong you are. It meets you in your failure. It surrounds you in your sorrow. It speaks peace in your panic. God doesn't need your strength to move. He just needs your heart to be open enough to say, "God, I'm not okay, but I'm yours." When life breaks you down, it's not the end of your story. It might actually be the beginning of something new, something deeper, because God often allows breakdowns before breakthroughs. He allows weakness so you'll finally lean on His strength instead of your own. He doesn't just work in your strong moments when everything's polished and pretty. He works in the raw, unfiltered, vulnerable places of your life, the places you're ashamed of, the fears you've never said out loud. The wounds you try to hide, that's where his healing begins. That's where transformation happens. Not by avoiding the pain, but by inviting him into it. Not by pretending to be strong, but by allowing him to be strong for you. Your weakness is not a liability in God's hands. It's an opportunity for his glory to shine. When you run out of strength, you're not failing. You're just being positioned for grace, the grace that carries, the grace that lifts, the grace that restores. Because what you see as the end, God sees as the starting point for something greater. Letting go isn't giving up, it's giving it to God. That simple shift in perspective changes everything. So many of us hold on tightly, not because we want control, but because we're afraid of what will happen if we lose it. We think, if I stop trying, if I stop pushing, won't everything fall apart? We grip life with clenched fists, trying to manage every outcome, fix every problem, protect ourselves from pain. And yet, the tighter we hold on, the more anxious, exhausted, and overwhelmed we become. God never meant for us to live that way. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you no longer dream, or work, or believe. It simply means you recognize the difference between your responsibility and God's. It means you stop carrying what was never yours to carry in the first place. There are things in life, deep things, heavy things, that only He can handle, and when you insist on holding them, you rob yourself of peace and make room for fear. Surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the spiritual maturity to say, God, I trust your hands more than mine. Letting go is a holy release, a moment when you stop trying to write the story and start trusting the author. It's a turning point where you decide, I'd rather walk in faith with God than walk in fear on my own. Sometimes we confuse control with safety. We think that if we hold on, we're being wise, responsible, or even faithful. But God calls us to a deeper kind of faith, one that's willing to let go of the outcome, the timeline, the way we thought it should happen. Letting go doesn't mean life will immediately look the way we want it to. It means we're no longer placing our identity or security in how things go, but in who God is. He knows the burden you're carrying. He sees how it's affecting you emotionally, spiritually, even physically. And He's not standing far off, waiting for you to figure it out. He's right there, whispering, give it to me. You don't have to do this alone. That decision to let go may not change your circumstances overnight, but it will change your heart. It will open the door to peace that surpasses understanding. Letting go is not passive, it's active trust. It's waking up each day and choosing to put your fear in His hands. It's laying your anxiety at His feet, not just once, but again and again. It's choosing to believe that even when you don't see the way forward, God is already walking ahead of you. You may not have the answers, but you have access to the one who does. And sometimes the most powerful prayer you can pray is simply, God, I give this to you. I can't carry it anymore. That's not giving up. That's faith in motion. That's choosing surrender over struggle. That's trading exhaustion for rest. Because when you let go, you're not falling into chaos. You're falling into grace. Peace isn't the absence of trouble. It's the presence of trust. That truth often runs counter to how we naturally think. We believe we'll have peace when the bills are paid, when the diagnosis changes, when the relationship is restored. We tie our inner calm to our outer circumstances, but if peace depended on everything going right, we'd rarely ever have it. Because life is unpredictable, messy, and often out of our control, God offers a different kind of peace. Not a peace that comes after the storm, but a peace that exists in the middle of it. It's a peace that doesn't always make sense to the world, a peace that doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from knowing the one who does. Real peace is not found in perfect conditions. It's found in complete surrender. It shows up when we stop demanding clarity and start choosing trust. When we say, God, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know you're with me, and that's enough. That's where peace begins, not in the absence of chaos, but in the assurance of God's presence. We often pray for our problems to go away, thinking that will bring us peace, but God is more interested in changing our hearts than changing our surroundings. Because if peace only comes when life is easy, it isn't really peace, it's just relief, and relief is temporary. True peace is rooted in faith, it's steady, it's anchored, it doesn't rise and fall with the economy, the doctor's report, or someone else's opinion. It holds you when everything else is shaking, when your world is falling apart and yet your spirit is calm. That's the peace that passes all understanding. That's the kind of peace Jesus talked about when he said, "My peace I give to you, not as the world gives." The world's peace is conditional. God's peace is eternal. The world says you'll have peace when everything is fixed. God says you'll have peace when you trust me, even if nothing changes. Peace is not pretending everything is fine. It's knowing that even when it's not, you are still held, still loved, still covered, and still guided by a God who has never failed and never will. That's what makes peace powerful. It doesn't require a perfect life. It just requires a faithful heart, one that says, "God, I may not see the way through, but I trust that you do. I choose to rest not because I understand, but because I believe you are good." So if you're waiting for life to calm down before you feel calm inside, you'll be waiting forever. But if you invite God into your chaos, you'll find that peace isn't something you chase. It's something you carry.